This is like my supplement cabinet, and there's some things in here that I might have recommended in the past and some things that I have not. The reason why I got them is because sometimes I feel like as a dietitian I need to try different things out, but in today's video again you're going to learn a lot more about these topics. But the typical supplements that we always kind of hear about are going to be things like multivitamins. Sometimes we also see here about things like, for example, like fat burners, and we also things about, or obviously things that we always also recommend, and we're going to be talking about this, is like fish oil, liquid or not liquid, vitamin D, and some of these different things like this. So of course there's a ton of things that you need to learn, specifically how to read a supplement facts label, how to understand exactly the efficacy and safety. But again, today in this video we're going to literally kind of cover some of the things more in depth. So let's get started. Talk about supplements, shall we? This topic is something that a lot of people is always asking, so I figure I actually talked a little bit about. First of all, when should you start taking supplements? Should you even start taking supplements right now? And then what supplements should you be taking, and what are some of the considerations that you have to understand before choosing to actually have a supplement? Before we move on this side, we actually kind of talks about the specific kind of supplements that I might have recommended to my clients and to people in the past. I figured that I first would talk about the fact that there is a pyramid in here that I want to make sure it's empty right now, but I want to show it to you. Some of you guys have seen it before, others have not. So I actually wanted to break this down so you understand exactly where the supplements actually fall in here. We call this pyramid the nutrition hierarchy pyramid. And essentially it's sort of like a framework in which, you know, nutrition is kind of built upon. Most people sometimes focus too much on certain things that are way above in the pyramid when they haven't even actually focused too much in the foundation. Now, I'm not going to explain each individual kind of section, but I'm going to tell you where supplements typically fall on. So, as you can kind of see at the bottom we're going to call this like energy/calories. So when you're actually starting a nutritional program or you're trying to actually improve your nutrition, you first need to understand how many calories you need to be consuming. Second of all, we obviously have macros. So how are those calories being split up, you know, or how much protein, carbohydrates, and fats you need to be consuming. Then we move into what we call micros, which are micronutrients. Are you getting good quality of macronutrients in there? Micronutrients are going to be something like vitamins and minerals, and that's usually going to be depending on what is the quality of the macronutrients that you're consuming. Are you actually filling out your entire day of like pizza and burgers and you know and fried foods, or are you actually getting vegetables and whole foods and things like that? After this, obviously we kind of like talk about meal timing. So how are you splitting those things out in the process? And last but not least, what do you think is going to be at the top? Supplements. So why am I actually telling you this? Because it's absolutely pointless to try to use a supplement when you're actually trying to overpower a lot of different things in your nutrition. And the biggest mistake that most people make nowadays is the fact they try to find something here when anything at the bottom is actually not well taken care of. There is no supplement that can replace food. Always food comes first, supplements come second. The word itself actually says it. It's a supplement. It supplements your diet. So that is one thing that we always try to make sure that we kind of get that point across. So it's at the very top. Now, does that mean that, let's say for example, your nutrition is not on point, does it mean that you absolutely cannot have supplements? Not necessarily. In fact, I'm going to show you some considerations in which I sometimes recommend it as we're trying to build and improve somebody's like nutritional lifestyle. Hopefully this makes sense to you, and so you understand exactly what importance a supplement actually plays in the full entire, looking at the bigger picture in your nutrition. So what are some considerations, like things that you really need to start to focus on or work on before you decide to take a supplement? Number one, you have to identify what is the purpose of the supplement that you want to take. Are you using it just for like health purposes? Are you using it for performance and actual like body composition improvements? Or are you using it as a functional, which actually kind of overlaps with health because there's like a functional need for a specific supplement that you're taking? First, like, you need to identify, why am I using it? What's the purpose of doing that? The second thing, we need to identify what's the safety of that supplement. Here is the flash, the flash news, guys, for you as far as like the supplement industry. It's very weakly regulated. I'm going to repeat that. It's very weakly regulated. That means that most people nowadays can literally combine a couple of ingredients, put it in a bottle, market it, and just simply say that it's safe, and they can market it and take it out to, like, literally to sell on Amazon. Anybody can create a supplement. There is a little bit more regulations nowadays compared to what it used to be, but still, you have to identify what's the safety of a specific supplement. Third, you need to figure out if there's any science behind them. Is there a scientific reason for me to take this, or this is just some influencers that recommend it? It's actually a supplement that maybe they run, or they actually have, or they own, and then they're just gonna recommend it. Are you gonna go based on because it's he says or she says that it's effective, or is there actual science to support that it works? Last but not least, you need to make sure that you consider the brand that you get it from. I'm not saying that there's like smaller companies like that actually are not reputable brands, but you always need to find and really need to do your research as far as like the brands. Like, can you contact the brand and ask about a supplement? Or is one of those like typical huge companies or even small companies that are super shady and that you don't even know where your stuff is coming from? Those are important things that you really need to consider. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the safety, science, and reputable brands, a little bit though, but I'm just going to tell you some of the things that I do recommend some of my clients and some of the things that you can safely take, and with some obviously restrictions. So I don't want to make sure that you take this up to heart and say, and going to go out and buy this specific products. I'm going to tell you some specific warnings and things like that you need to consider before you decide to take on supplements. Most of the supplements that I recommend, if somebody hasn't really completed all these kinds of like step process to make sure their nutrition is on point, it's usually to fill in important gaps that I feel that it's going to take a little while to do with nutrition. And I prefer if we actually take a little shortcut when it comes down to fixing those things, because it's going to improve somebody's health. One of the things that in the United States most people don't get enough of is going to be omega-3s. Omega-3s is a type of like fatty acid, and it's really helpful for a lot of things in your body, from cognitive health, inflammation support, joint support, and all these different great things. And a lot of us are not really necessarily getting too much omega-3s, so I do recommend fish oil as a typical supplement for most people. It's contraindicated for people that are on blood thinners. So if you actually are watching this and you're on a blood thinner, don't really do that. Now, most fish oil companies, going back to the reputable brand, are, excuse the word, shit. Like, seriously. Like, if you go to, for example, Costco, all those places, you can get this massive bottle of like fish oil for like $10 or something like that. Don't. If you get what you pay for, and a lot of times some of those supplements, you're not getting even absorption rates like that are actually even remotely effective. So make sure that you're choosing reputable brands. One I do like to recommend for fish oil, and I'm not associated with it in any kind of way, shape, or form, is called Nordic Naturals. There are a few others, but that's like the first one that kind of comes to mind. They work a lot with healthcare practitioners, and I do recommend their stuff because I know exactly where their fish oil comes from and how it's packaged and all these different things. The second thing that I always recommend a lot of my clients to be on, or to at least test it out for specific reasons, is vitamin D. Our world, it's literally like chronically deficient in vitamin D. And when you go to a doctor, if you're like above 30, and you'll know if you've ever got tested on vitamin D, sometimes some doctors would recommend or would tell you like it's normal. But in reality, optimal levels, like that doesn't mean that you don't have a deficiency, but you don't really have optimal levels. So vitamin D is another supplement that I recommend. And you probably may be asking, well, Andres, I live in Florida, or I live in a sunny area and I get a lot of sun exposure. I do as well, and I realized last year that I'm vitamin D deficient, and I live in Tampa, Florida, and I go to the beach and expose myself to the sun sometimes. So that's why you have to really get tested. But I do recommend in many cases actually supplementing with vitamin D. The last one is going to be magnesium. Magnesium is a very, very important one that sometimes I also recommend many people. I do recommend either to take magnesium citrate or magnesium bis or bisglycinate, which basically is two different kinds that absorb better in your body and doesn't really necessarily cause a lot of like GI issues or gastrointestinal problems when you consume them, like things like going to the bathroom too quickly or things like that. Anyways, those are going to be the main health ones that I actually get my clients on this side. You may be asking, what about multivitamins, Andres? I do and have recommended multivitamins if I'm working with somebody that has a really terrible diet at the beginning, and we are taking baby steps to try to improve that. So in some cases like that, I may recommend a multivitamin just to fill the gaps until that person's micro and micronutrients are well established, and at that point I just tell them you don't really need to be taking this anymore. So keep that in mind. Other stuff, I'm not going to get too much into it, but then for people that are looking for performance and body composition improvements, the most researched supplements to date are going to be creatine monohydrate, beta-alanine for lactic acid buffering capacity. I'm not going to talk too much into that yet. Caffeine, it's like the typical one, and any kind of like nitric acid supplementation, such as like, for example, beetroot extract and things like that. If you're talking more from like the functional standpoint, like hormonal balance and all these different things, I have recommended many people ashwagandha. There's a bunch of other stuff like something like maca root powder. However, be cautious about the stuff that you're taking. I'm not going to tell you right now to go and get ashwagandha. Really consult with a nutrition coach. If you're working directly with me, we can figure this out. Curcumin is actually helpful for inflammation support. This is honestly something that can fall into the health category. But anyways, as a recap, make sure you understand where supplements actually fall in your nutrition pyramid. If you're not taking care of this, then don't even focus on this. In the case you will, make sure you look at these considerations, and then number 3, make sure that you understand what are some of the things that you could technically be taking. If you haven't watched some of my videos about fat burners, which is actually a typical supplement that most people like to kind of get on, make sure you go back to actually watch it. So hopefully this video was helpful. You learn a couple things here and there about supplementation. Before you decide to take anything, what it's best for you to do is to make sure that you consult with a nutrition expert, a registered dietitian, a health professional, to make sure that the decision that you're making as far as taking a supplement is actually the right one. Not everybody needs them. Some people actually do. You need to make sure that you do so with education and being an informed consumer. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And of course, don't forget to actually hit that subscribe button down below. If you love this video, leave a comment, hit a like or something like this so we know you're enjoying some of our content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.